All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Coach David. I'm going to be helping you and kind of going through our presentation today of our students' EAED results, right? And how our students got accepted. Okay. So we will go ahead and kind of get started recording. I want to make sure that we're staying on track and on time here. If you guys do have any questions, about anything that we're talking about today, please put your questions in the Q&A and in the chat. We will have a Q&A section at the end, right? And then we'll make sure to answer those questions there. Okay. There might be some times that I ask for kind of some interaction. So if you guys are, next to your keyboards, or if you guys can type real quickly, that would be greatly appreciated as well. Okay. So let's get started before we get too late, and we'll get going here. Okay. Oh, it looks like we're already recording. So again, welcome to our Ivy League admission secrets presentation for tonight. Again, we're going to be talking about early action, early decision results, right? Now, there might be a logo on here that you have not seen before, okay? And that's okay, right? As you see below, it says formerly College Admission Secrets. We have changed our name. Okay. And there's multiple reasons why we have changed our name, but I'll explain why we changed our name and kind of what it means later on. Okay. Now, like I said, I want to introduce our new company. It is Eagle Lock, right? Now, you guys might be thinking, what the heck? College admission secrets sounded way better, right? But there's a message behind our new name. Okay. If you actually flip this around and read it backwards, right, it actually spells out college. Okay. We are here to help you crack the college code, right? A lot of you have come from our UC admission secrets group, right? Some of you have come from our Ivy League admission secret group, right? Some of you guys have come from our financial aid secrets group. But one of the things that you guys know from our different groups is that we're trying to get you all the information. We're trying to unravel the mysteries of the admissions process and financial aid process. Okay. So Eagle Lock fit in perfectly because once you see it, right, you're never going to be able to unsee it. Okay. You know the code forever now. Okay. Now, the first thing that I want to say here is Happy New Year to all of our families. Okay. This is my second, right, training of the new year, right? I'm very happy to be here with all of you guys, right? And I'm happy to see that, some familiar names in the attendees list and also some new ones, okay? But I also did want to recognize kind of what's going on in the world right now. So we're based in California, right? Our headquarters is in Southern California, right? So our thoughts and prayers go out to those affected by the Southern California wildfires, right? Again, we have employees that live in that area as well. And so we are kind of staying abreast of anything. If there's anything that we can do to help or, kind of help in your particular situation, please reach out to us, through our different channels. Okay. All right. So first, a little bit about me. Okay. And I'll also talk about what we're going to cover today. So like I said before, we're going to be breaking down early action. Okay. There's various different types of early action and there's also early decision. So we'll talk about that, right? We'll also talk about what our students did that got them into these elite schools, right? So this is my first part where I'm going to ask for a little bit of interaction. Okay. So if you guys could go ahead and put your students' grad year in the chat box. So if they're a senior, it's 2025. If they're a junior, 2026, right? So on and so forth. If you can kind of go into the chat and tell me what grade is your student in, right? Or what year are they graduating? That'd be great. Okay. Again, if you do have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A or in the chat as we go through, and I will make sure to get to them. Okay. Thank you guys for doing that. I see a lot of 26s. I see a lot of 27s. Okay. So again, high school families, right? So that's really, really, really great. Now, just a little bit about me. Okay. So I used to read applications for college. I went to a small liberal arts kind of school in Southern California called the Claremont Colleges. I was a reader for them, right? I also was a law school admissions reader as well. Okay. I'm a former lawyer, right? I like to call myself the Ivy League guru, right? And I'm also the financial aid master here at Eagle Lock. Okay. So if you have questions about any of those things, graduate school, college, financial aid, I am here to help you. Okay. Now, I want to show you guys a little bit of this year's success. Okay. Now, we have had some great, great classes. Well, this is one of the best, right? So let me kind of just share these things with you. Okay. So we had our first one kind of like chronologically that came in was our student that got into Cornell. Okay. They got admitted and they're going to be studying neuroscience there. Okay. We had actually a few students get into Notre Dame. Okay. So those students are headed there. One studying business, another one studying biology. Okay. We also have a student in at MIT this year. Okay. So again, great results there. They're going to be studying computer science. And we even have another student that is going to UPenn, right? They are going into nursing. Okay. So we've had some great results. Okay. We want to help your student do that too, right? A lot of people think that it's out of reach or that it's not possible, but it is. Okay. And I'm going to talk about the academics, the activities, the testing, all the kind of different pieces that add into the puzzle that got our students in. Okay. So hopefully I pull back the curtains a little bit, show you guys a little bit in depth, right? Now, I'm not going to say that it was easy, right? All of our students put in a lot of hard work, right? So if you're kind of thinking like, oh, what's the cheat code to get to an Ivy League? Unfortunately, there isn't one, right? If your student's like, I'm okay being a B student, unfortunately, the Ivy Leagues aren't for them, right? The Ivy Leagues and kind of the Ivy Plus schools aren't for students that are looking to coast by. They're looking for students that are looking to push forward. Okay. So before we get into kind of what our students did, I did want to make sure that we went over the early decision processes, right? Because some people understand them, some people don't understand them, some people think they understand them, but I haven't really seen a family or a kind of a student that understands it in totality. So we're going to talk about what early is, okay? Now, early has evolved. Now, parents here, right? There's probably a lot of parents here, right? For parents, back in the day, like when I was applying, when you were applying, there was only one type of thing. It was called early decision, right? You would pick one school, you would put all your eggs in one basket at that school, and if it turned out great, great. And if it didn't, well, you had your other backups, right? But now that has changed. There are technically four different types of early decision, but I lumped two of them together because they are basically the same. Okay. So there's early action, there's single choice or restrictive early action, and then there's early decision. They are very similar, yet very different. So we are going to talk about each and every one of them. Okay. So the first one, early action, right? You apply by the early deadline. It's sometime between October 15th and November 1st of that senior, admission cycle, right? And then you will get your decision by late December, right? Now, here's what can possibly happen. There are three possible results. You can be accepted, which is great, right? You can be deferred or you can be rejected. Okay. Now, I get a lot of questions about, oh, okay, well, if you're rejected, can you reapply during the regular cycle? No, you've already been rejected, right? The only ways that you're kind of in the running or in are if you're accepted or deferred. If you're deferred, that means they have pushed your application to the regular decision pile, right? If you are rejected, that's game over. Okay. Doesn't mean that you can reapply as a regular decision student, right? Now, the thing about early action is that you apply by October 15th, get a decision back by December. And if you are accepted, well, that's great, but you don't have to do anything about it. Okay. You don't have to make a decision on the final school that you are going to until May 1st of the following year, right? So all the decisions come out, you weigh your options, and then you can make a decision. Now, in addition, right, if they are like a real just straight early action school, right, the one benefit of early action is that you're allowed to apply to as many early action colleges as you want, right? So that means that you could apply to 5, 10, 15, 30, 40, 50 early action schools if you wanted to. The process does not restrict you in any way, okay? So early action is a way to kind of turn it in early, get a result early, but not restrict your options. Okay. Now, a more restrictive option, right, is single choice restrictive early action. Okay. Now, this is the timeline is exactly the same. You apply by October 15th to the November 1st, you get your result by late December, right? Again, the results that can come out are accepted, rejected, and deferred, right? If you are accepted, you do not have to make a decision until May 1st. Everything looks exactly the same, but the in addition parts are the parts that are different, right? Everything is the same as early action, but, right? But, right? You are restricted by the college's policies on where you can apply. Okay. So some schools, right? We'll take a school that's close to us that has early action, right? And it actually has restrictive early action, which is Stanford. Okay. So Stanford has restrictive early action. Now, what does that mean? That means that the only early school that you can apply to is Stanford. So you can't apply early action out anywhere else. You can't apply early decision anywhere else. But again, I said you have to follow the college's policies. Per the college's policies, there is one school that you can apply to early, and that's USC. Why they made that exception, I'm not sure, right? I don't know. Maybe the kind of the presidents and the deans of Stanford and USC are friends. I'm not sure why, but they did make that one exception. But if it's a school that says you can't do it to any other school, then you can't apply early action to any other school, early decision to any other school, or restrictive early action or single choice early action to any other school. Okay. Now, other places say that you can apply to your home state school. So I know that we have families from all over the country, right? Now, like the majority of our families are from California, but we have families from everywhere else, right? So let's say that you decided to apply, single choice early action to Yale, right? And let's say that their policy says that you can apply to your home state school early action, and you live in Michigan. Well, University of Michigan has early action, so you would be able to apply there. But the policy at Yale would also restrict you from applying to anything early decision. Okay. So when you're applying single choice or restrictive early action, you have to be careful at the fine print. Okay. And again, you might be thinking, well, how would they ever know? And does it really matter because they're restrictive early action? So it doesn't mean that we're locked into anything. Well, what if they do contact each other, right? You don't want to be put in a position to kind of, tell one school that you did something that you weren't supposed to, right? That's not really going to be a good look for you, okay? So make sure that you're following the rules there, okay? And finally, we have early decision. Everything I said about early action, restrictive early action, single choice early action stays the same here, right? The timeline is the same. There are three possible results: accepted, rejected, and deferred, right? But here, the differences start if you're accepted. If you are accepted, right? Usually before, right? And when I say before, like I mean 3 years ago, right? And before 3 years ago, when there weren't problems with the financial aid like process, right? They gave you 72 hours to turn in your deposit, right? Now the deposit can range anywhere from, $300 to $1,000 to $1,500, right? But you would have to turn that in to secure your spot, right? But nowadays, because of the delays in financial aid and because the financial aid is coming out later and later and later, they post a later date, right? But even though they post a later date, I've seen that the latest date that they have is usually around February 1st, right? So if your student has gotten in somewhere early decision, you might want to check on that deadline to make sure that it has not passed, okay? Especially, obviously, if you're going, right? Now, when you're going into early decision, there's one piece that you need to keep in mind. The piece that you need to keep in mind is that you, the student, your parents, and the high school counselor all sign contracts. So when you're deciding on your early decision school, you need to make sure that it is more likely than not, or most likely that you will be attending that school, right? So you do need to be a little bit more sure about it, right? For students that are unsure, right? Because I do have students and, let's say that, they've never visited NYU before, but they've heard so many great things about it. They have friends that went there, but they've never visited and they can't really make up their mind. I usually tell them not to apply early decision because what if they do get in? Then they are bound to go. And then what if they go to New York and realize that they hate living in a city, right? Then we're going to have a problem. Okay. Now, another point that I want to make is this. While it is the most restrictive out of all the processes, it's not that there is no way out of it, right? Let's say that a certain school accepts you early decision, right? But they give you a financial aid package that your family just cannot handle, right? You can get out of it, right? Or let's say that your student applies to a school that's far away, gets in, but then decides last minute, Mom, Dad, I can't move across the country. I don't know if I can do it, right? You can back out, but there may be consequences. Now, the consequences are not for you as the student, but they are for your kind of juniors at your high school, right? I have heard, right? And again, this is not every single situation, but if a student does back out of an early decision agreement, that school is put on a quote unquote blacklist for a few years so that if a student from that school applies to a school that particular school early decision, they're automatically blacklisted and rejected. Now, the truth of that, I'm not sure. right? But it is something that goes around the rumor mill. Okay. So when you are going through this process, make sure, or at least 99%, that you are happy with this school. You are happy with all the things that come with it, the city you're living in, right? The environment, the weather, literally everything needs to fit who you are and what you want. Okay. So the moment that you guys have all been waiting for now. Let's talk about our students, right? Now, a lot of you, you've heard of, oh, like, your cousin's aunt's, neighbor's cousin went to UPenn, right? You hear about this, far relative that went to Cornell, right? But I'm going to tell you about students that made it this year. Okay. So this isn't that far away. There's only 2 degrees of separation. You guys there in Zoom land, me, and then that student. Okay. So, we will go ahead and go through this. Okay. Looks like I misspelled a word. Sorry about that, right? Sometimes it automatically changes things, right? Grammarly and those sorts of things. Okay. But let's go ahead and talk about academics real quick. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is rigor. Okay. Our students did not just take classes in high school. Okay. If your student is a student that is like a junior or senior that is just taking classes at their high school and thinking that they're going to get to Harvard, thinking that they're going to get to Stanford, sorry. Okay. Our students were pushing way, way, way ahead, right? I have heard many students complain, right? And I actually know of some school districts that are notorious about this, right? But some like high schools restrict what students can do outside of the classroom on their own to increase their academic rigor, right? But we have ways to get around it, right? And also, something I've been hearing more commonly recently is that my high school counselor is just telling me to take the bare minimum to graduate, right? But I don't think that is wrong because you have to understand what the job of a high school counselor is. Okay. I know a lot of parents are frustrated at counselors and get angry with counselors, but here's the real thing. Their job kind of description is to graduate these people out of this high school and move them on, move them out, right? They don't care if you go to college, right? They don't care if you go to community college, a 4-year college, an Ivy League. They don't care if you go to Nova Scotia and go to college. It doesn't matter, right? To them, if you graduate and they hand you a kind of high school diploma, their job has been completed 100%. Okay. So, but let me talk about rigor. Let me show you some examples of what our students did to kind of get to the points that they did. Okay. Now, we had students apply to different majors: business, nursing, computer science, neuroscience, engineering. Okay. So your student, right, if they are kind of in that kind of STEM realm, right, and I do include business in the STEM realm, right, then this is kind of what it's going to be, right? Now we have students applying to other things like social sciences or the arts, right, or other areas as well, but a lot of them applied regular decisions. So we're still waiting on those results. So as soon as we have those, we'll also let you know, okay? But for these students, right, one common theme across the board was that their math was pushed way, 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 way up. Okay. Now, at most schools, the highest class that you can take in high school is going to be AP Calculus BC. Okay. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, how about AP Statistics? Well, AP Statistics, technically, you can take that class after you've taken Algebra 2. So I don't see it as a higher level math class than calculus. Okay. But every single one of our students was at multivariable calculus or higher. That is the level after BC. Okay. Our engineering and CS students are currently, right now, they just finished up differential equations, right? They are going to be taking discrete math next year or like this coming semester, right? That is the only class that is available, or that's the last class available at the community college. Okay. There's no higher math levels there, right? So our students are pushing in math and across different things: business, engineering, computer science, nursing, doesn't matter. They were pushing, 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 right? So for all of our students, we created plans for them, right, that worked around their high school restrictions and policies to ensure that they could go further, right? Again, I know there's a lot of families here saying, hey, well, my school doesn't allow that, so I guess we can't do that. No, that's not the case. There are ways for you to do that, but it might take a little bit more time. It might take a little bit more effort, right? But we do need to try to get there. A very startling statistic that I want to bring out to you is this, right? So at the Ivy Leagues across the board, right? Now, I'm not gonna state that it's at every single Ivy League because I found the stat for Harvard. Okay. Now, Harvard, 95% of accepted students were at multivariable calculus or higher. 95%. So the 5% that weren't at multivariable calculus, well, I'm sure they were really advanced in something else. But, right, 95%, that's a pretty telling statistic. So I don't want to say that it is the new minimum, but that's what it seems like it is, right? The new minimum is multivariable. Now, a lot of parents might be thinking, well, I didn't even take that in college. Yeah, I know, right? But college isn't the same as it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. Okay. So, right, math is a way, especially for STEM students, to push further. Okay. Another thing is kind of like APs. People always ask us, how many APs do you have to take? There's no set number, right? Now, the kind of the APs I'm going to show that our students took, well, they literally wanted to take everything that was available at their school. There's variations between them, right? And so I will show you kind of what they took, right? But don't take that as gospel. I've had students that took 5 APs that went to an Ivy League school. I've had students that took 16 APs that didn't make it to an Ivy League school. The difference between kind of the number of APs you take is in what is available at your school. If there was 5 APs available and you took 5 APs, well, you took 100% of the AP classes available. But let's say that there was 25, APs available at your school and you took 5. Well, you took 20%, right? So there are differences depending on the school, right? Now, our students that got into these schools that I just showed you right now, right? Those students were all on an AP schedule, right? Now, an IB schedule, as soon as we have a student for the Ivy League or Ivy Plus schools that had an IB schedule, IB is a little bit less prevalent in the kind of like in the state of California, right? But as soon as we have one, we'll go ahead and show you that as well. Okay. But let's go ahead and talk, right? So my student that went to Cornell, these were the classes that they took, right? So they took CSP, CSA, world history, statistics, psychology, right? AP Calc AB, BC, Physics 1, macroeconomics, microeconomics, English Lang, AP Bio, AP Physics C, AP English Literature. And in addition, they took community college courses. They took 3. They took sociology, cultural anthropology, and history of media. Okay. So these are the classes that they took. Okay. Again, this is not a roadmap of how your student needs to get there. Okay. Our student that got into MIT, these were the classes that they took, right? If you look, there's a slight tweak on what this student took versus the student at Cornell, right? And the tweak is because this student was going for computer science. So instead of kind of biology and psychology and those different kind of classes, they focus more on the physics realm. Okay. So again, it's about focusing the classes that you're taking towards your interests, right? And in addition, they took 4 community college classes. They took Java, they took data structures, advanced C++, and object-oriented programming C++. Okay. Our student that got into Notre Dame, right, for business, right? They focused a little bit more on social sciences, if you look, right? AP government, AP world history, AP US history, right? AP economics, right? And then at the community college, they also focused on social sciences and and also their field of interest, which was business. So they took psychology, biological anthropology, astronomy, and then introduction to business. Okay. Our student at UPenn, okay? This student took CSA, right? Biology, US history, statistics. They took the math kind of program. They only did 1 year, like, or 1 semester of AP Physics C because that's all that fit in their schedule for mechanics, right? They took AP Chemistry and AP English Literature. This was our nursing student, okay? So, and in addition, they took community college classes, history of modern music, sociology. They also took a class called modern sociology, ethnic studies, and they also took a freshman English class because they wanted to try to get out of their freshman English class, right? So these are the types of classes that our students are taking. On average, anywhere between 12 and 15 APs. Okay. Now, if you look at kind of like the number of students that are taking this level of AP, there's actually not that many. Okay. There are 8 Ivy League schools in the United States, right? Roughly speaking, there's anywhere between 4 to 6,000 spots uh, at every single one of the Ivy League schools, right? So just on average, let's just call it 5. There's about 40,000 seats for students as freshmen at these institutions. Okay. if you look at the chart of like how many students took how many APs and how many AP exams, you'll actually see that the number of students that took over 13 or 14 APs is less than 30,000. Okay. So there's 40,000 spots. There's 30,000 kids that do above a certain number, right? Now, like I said, there is no correlation because I have had students that have taken way less APs and have gotten in, right? But if your school does have a lot of opportunities for AP classes and your student is up to the challenge, then 13, 14 is not a bad mark to try to hit, right? But, right, big but, you need to make sure that you're balancing other things, your mental and physical health, your activities, your other parts of your life. Okay. If your student is studying 12 hours a day and sleeping for 2.5 hours and going back to school, that is not a healthy way to live. Okay. So you need to find that balance. Okay. All right. So takeaways, right? Again, for some parents, this might have scared you a little bit, right? The students you see here that got into these schools are not ordinary students, right? I'm sorry to say, but ordinary students do not go to Ivy League schools. They do not go to Ivy Plus schools. Okay. These students all made a concerted effort to show their rigor and make sure that the colleges knew they were following their interests. Some of these students took online high school courses to supplement or community colleges classes to supplement, right? But each of them did something more than what their high school offered, right? Now, if your student is a student that says, oh, well, the graduation requirements, I only have to take 3 years of math. I only have to take 3 years of English. I only have to take 2 years of history. They already have the wrong mindset. Okay. So if your student is someone that is saying that, right, then I think you need to show them this presentation, right? Now, I don't do this to scare, but I want you to show you the reality of what our students are doing academically to make it to the schools that they really want. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about activities here. Okay. Now, a lot of questions in our program are related to activities. Oh, what do we do here? What do we do there? Right. And so I want to kind of tell you what the common themes were for these students and also show you some examples. Okay. So let's first talk about the common themes. The first one was leadership. Okay. The Ivy League schools are very proud of their alumni because they go out into the world and make change. Okay. So they want to see students take charge, right? Our students were leaders inside and outside of the classroom. Some of their like leadership organization, like leadership positions were in different types of organizations, right? DECA, FBLA, HOSA, like they parts of different cultural organizations, religious organizations, sports, music. It was all across the board, right? Now, if you actually think about it, we had students that were going into, business. So like DECA makes sense and FBLA makes sense. But cultural organizations, well, you guys are probably thinking to yourselves, who does that make sense for? Which one of the kids? The nursing kid, right? The computer science kid, right? The student that actually had a very strong cultural organization leadership position was our student that was studying computer science. Okay. Now, one of the things that I will say, because I know that computer science and engineering is a very, very competitive major, and it is also something that is very, very, very popular, is this. Okay. Computer science and engineering students focus a lot on themselves. Okay. They focus on their accolades. They focus on going to hackathons, on going robotics competitions, right? They have all these like AWS competitions, so on and so forth. They're so focused on kind of like building those things up because it's so competitive, right? The one thing I will say is that the biggest complaint that I get from admissions officers about engineering and computer science students is that they don't care about anybody else. That's what engineering and computer science profiles normally look like. And so it looks like they don't care. I know that it isn't because they don't care, but because it is so competitive, they're trying to stand out. But you cannot forget about your community, right? Now, your community doesn't mean your neighborhood. It could be your neighborhood, but it could also be a certain group of people that you find affinity with, right? It also might be for people with like purple hair, right? Or it might be people that are left-handed. Whatever you decide that community is, you have to try to make a change in that community. Okay. So the first piece that I saw in all of these students was that leadership piece. Okay. The second piece is dedication. Okay. Endurance. Okay. When we meet with students in our program that are younger, right? Especially, seventh, eighth, maybe ninth grade, the kind of piece that gets to me is like, yeah, the parents, yeah, I know, I understand. You guys want to get them into activities and have them have experiences, but going, once a year to the food bank or this or that, yes, while it is a good thing that you are doing, right, it doesn't show the dedication that is needed and that the colleges are looking for, right? So our students did have those one-off events where they went and helped out with a certain thing, but where they really spent their time and energy is with specific organizations, okay, that were of their interest area. Now, one of the questions I always get about kind of, oh, what organization should I volunteer for? It's the one that your student is actually passionate about. If your student doesn't care about beach cleanup, they shouldn't be doing it, right? If your student doesn't care about, I don't know, protecting the forest, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, right? But if their passion is not in that, right, then they shouldn't be doing those sorts of things. But let's say that their passion is puppies, right? Then they should be going and saving puppies, okay? That's where they're going to be able to stay the longest. That's where they're going to want to create a change, right? What colleges want to see is your incremental growth in an organization rising up to more leadership levels and more responsibilities, right? It's all about personal growth, okay? So that's what we want to see, okay? All right. So let's keep going on. Now, one of the pieces that I think is the most influential, right, here is personal projects. Okay. So personal projects is probably a term that you guys have heard of before, right? But it means something different to everyone in this room because it's been explained in a different way. So let me explain what personal project is to me. Okay. To me, it's about initiative and it's also about community. Okay. Now, I'm not trying to bash on the CS and engineering students, but it's just such an easy example. A lot of students come to us, they're CS engineering majors, and they say, oh, I built a website. That's my personal project. And then my first question is, so how does that help your community? Right? And then they kind of sit there and like, what do you mean? Right? I built a website, right? Building a website is not a personal project in my mind. It's a project that you spend time on, but it's not a personal project. So while this is something that we usually kind of keep for our students and our families, right? I wanted to make sure that you guys had access to it too. These are the questions during, our meetings and during our roadmaps that I ask students, right? And usually they cannot answer them. And so I have them kind of prepare it for the next monthly check-in, right? But these are the questions that I ask, okay? I ask them, what is something that you love doing or that you're passionate about, right? The second thing I ask is, what about the thing that you love do you want to share with other people, right? Three is, what community do you want to share it with? Again, you need to define what that community is, right? And number four is, what are you going to do to create an impact in that community? Now, these questions are questions that need to be answered, right? And your student, you might be like, oh yeah, my kid can answer these questions. But here's the follow-up question to every single one of those bullets. The follow-up to each one of those bullets is why, right? Oh, you love playing basketball? Tell me why, right? A lot of kids get stuck right there. One of the key pieces of our program is asking students why, to have them think a little bit deeper about the decisions, the choices, the kind of experiences that they're having, right? If you don't think about it and you just blindly do something, there's going to be nothing that comes of it, right? Oh, I was part of a research project. Oh, why did you do that? Well, my mom signed me up, right? That is not the answer that colleges want to hear. Okay. So there needs to be something deeper. There needs to be a drive behind why you're doing something. Okay. I do see the questions here. Okay. I will get to them. I just don't want to lose my place in this presentation because there's a lot to get through. Okay. Now I'm going to give some examples. It's all about connecting. Okay. So one of our students, they connected with their own heritage, right? They were actually a first generation immigrant, right? And so what they did was they wanted to pave the way for, future children that are thinking about coming to the United States. So they started English classes, right? Eventually that English class, it spanned across like rural parts of their home country in 20 different schools, and they had 25 volunteers helping. Okay. I had another student. They adopted a family, right? So they fundraised to help with their financial needs during the holidays. They got together and gave emotional support, and obviously, they gave toys to the children, right? But like they went above and beyond, right? They made sure that kind of like everything that came up, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, right? the sun was rising, the sun was setting, whatever it was, they made sure that this family was taken care of, right? And my student, over the course of 2.5 years, raised about $17,000 to provide for this family. Okay. And it was a family that was a refugee family of war. Okay. Another student, right? They did in-game development with Roblox, right? So for some parents here, you're like, oh gosh, Roblox, right? Video games, right? But here's what my student did. They created kind of like clothing and different items in Roblox and they sold it. Okay. And then they used that money to to raise awareness of mental health at their school and in their city. Okay. That student raised close to $40,000. Okay. They were really good at making their Roblox things, right? I'm not that familiar with it, but supposedly other of our students knew that person's kind of clothing and things like that, right? And then finally, one of our students, they created a robotics program for at-risk youth to expose them to new fields and possible future careers. Okay. So it's about taking something that you love doing, right? Video games, right? Or kind of like, being there, being a big brother, right? Connecting with your own heritage. Those are the pieces, right? Now, if you actually look, the only one that has a slight connection is the robotics one, right? The video games, yeah, I guess you can say that has a connection to computer science, but the only one that really has a connection is the robotics one. Everything else was about what they were interested in. Okay. So that is the focus of your personal project. Doesn't need to be related to your major, doesn't need to be related to your field of study. It needs to be about who you are as a person. These students, I can't know for sure, but I think a big part in what got them in was that the colleges were able to see what type of person they are, right? It's not about grades, right? To a certain extent, yes, right? It's not all about test scores, right? It's about them understanding who you are as a person and seeing if you fit in to their campus community. Okay. Now, I am going to talk about standardized tests though. And the reason why I'm going to talk about standardized tests is because it is coming back with a vengeance. Okay. So for the class of 2024, there was 10 colleges, 10 in the United States that were test required. For class of 2025, there's about 60. For the class of 2026, I believe it's going to be over 150. And by the time it is class of 2027, it's going to be 200 plus, right? So there's going to be a school on your list, most likely, that requires the SAT or the ACT, right? Now, between our students in our program, there's an even split. Now, for our students that were applying to Ivy League type schools, the score ranges were from about 1480 to 1560. For ACT, they were about 33 to 36, right? Now, I am one of those people that wishes that tests didn't exist, but they do, okay? And like I said, they are coming back with a vengeance. There are more colleges that are going to be test required in the future years, right? Now, when you're planning out testing, right? Obviously, we want to get the highest score possible, right? The SAT changed a little while ago for those that kind of, have been through this process. The SAT used to be paper and pencil. It is now fully digital, right? There's one pro tip I'm going to give you here. The ACT is changing in April. The first iteration of the digital ACT is coming out, okay? So the ACT is also changing, okay? The ACT digital format is changing as well, right? I think I did that. No, not yet. So the format of the ACT is also changing. Whereas there used to be a reading, English, math, and science section that were required for you to take, now the science section is now going to be optional. Okay. So that change is happening on the digital ACT starting in April. And that change will happen on the paper ACT starting paper and digital on or in September. Okay. So keep that in mind. Okay. So I'm a little over right now. Okay. I just want to make sure that everyone is still okay with me going on, or I can end it here. So there's just a little bit more that we need to get through. So if I can just get people to type yes real quick in the chat, I will take another 7, 8 minutes. Okay. So if you guys can just type yes in the chat real quick. Okay. Awesome. 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 Okay. I see a flood. Okay. So I'm going to keep going because everyone seems like they want to continue. Okay. So let's keep going, right? I'm going to talk about AP exams now, right? So for AP exams, here's my advice. Try your best, okay? You don't need to get a 4. You don't need to get a 5, right? Our students for sure did not have all fours and fives. Okay. Um, I would even venture to say that a couple of the students, right, had more threes than fours than fives. Okay. So when they got their scores, they came to us distraught, right? It was so melodramatic, right? They came to the meeting, right, head down, coach, I'm so sorry, right? And I was like, about what? Like, I didn't do too well on my AP test. And I was like, okay, that's fine. All right, let's move on to the next topic. And then they were so surprised. And I was like, don't worry about it, right? The AP exam is just a one-time marker of, well, like how well you can perform on a one-time exam, right? Your AP class is the kind of measure of your grit and determination, right? If I had a choice between a student that got, perfect marks in their class and a one on their AP exam, and a student that got C's on in their class and then got a five on their AP exam, I would take the kid that got A's and got a one on their AP exam every single time, right? Because a 1.5 hour exam doesn't really tell me who you are, but 8 months of a subject and all those assignments and tests and quizzes, that does tell me who you are. Okay. So just because you have lower exam scores, it's okay, right? But there's different strategies about how you should turn in what scores to what schools, right? So it is, you know, not pivotal that you get just fours and just fives, right? So if there's anyone out there right now that is thinking, oh, I want to go ahead and retake a test that I took last year, please stop because it's not really going to help that much. Okay. And if you have to study more than 20, 30, 40 hours to regain the knowledge from last year's class, it's not kind of like an efficient use of your time. Okay. So AP exam scores, they don't guarantee you anything. All they guarantee you is an AP Scholar Award. That's it, right? So if you take three or more AP exams and you get above a 3.5 on those three, you get an AP exam or like an AP Scholar Award. But that's it, right? But again, even that award doesn't really mean that much, right? So don't be fixated on these exams. Don't kill yourself, right? Again, try your best, right? But you don't need to be like, staying up all night and pulling all-nighters, staying up, 3, 4 days at a time to make sure that you go through all the information and subject material. Okay. It should be a slow, steady kind of like you should prepare and then go take the test. Okay. Now, takeaways, right? Now, this might seem really simple, right? But testing is just testing. That's it. Okay. Don't be afraid. Don't get stressed, right? What the score that you get is what it is. We will live with it, right? It is not going to be something that you remember in 40 years. Okay. Go ask your parents, right? So parents, I see students in here too. So go ask your parents what they got on their SAT. I doubt any of them will remember. Okay. So just know that it will not determine your life. Okay. But if we can get a high score, that's great. Okay. All right. So just a couple more things, right? Again, we have changed our name to Eagle Lock. It is college backwards, right? Now that you've seen it, you'll never be able to unsee it, right? So we want to make sure that families are working smarter, okay, not harder, right, to get to their college goals, right? We want to make sure that we identify goals, we want to create the plan, and then we want to help the student execute. That is our whole purpose of being here, right? Now, college admission secrets is not going away, right? We're still here, right? It's kind of like the artist formerly known as Prince, right? It is Eagle Lock, formerly known as College Admission Secrets, right? So very soon, we will be holding a CASCon, right? College Admission Secrets Conference, right? It's going to be a one-day online virtual conference, right? Where we bring in everybody, right? We bring in kind of colleges, we bring in, research groups, we bring in, people that can look at your art portfolio. It's going to be everything there, right? It's going to be like a bonanza of information, and we want to provide that for families. It will be online, okay? We're also coming out with a newsletter soon so that you guys are up to date on the most kind of common things for, January or February or March, right? We'll also talk about the trends in college admissions. We'll also talk about, unique summer program opportunities, right? And we're also going to have, different kind of scholarship opportunities on there as well, right? So the first edition is slated to drop next week, right? And so registration is going to be opening this week, right? And if you guys are interested in that, you can text the number that we will have at the end and ask about the newsletter. Okay. Another thing, I saw a lot of junior families in here. Okay. And so I wanted to make sure that if you're part of our program, well, you've signed up for this, right? Because we told you about this a month ago, right? And if you're not one of our coaching families, this is an opportunity for you guys to work with us on a shorter term basis, right? We have two different things that are coming up this spring and summer. The first is a Kickstart event where we help students, come with their ideas, right? We talk about it with them, and then they leave with rough drafts, right? And then the accelerator is a more small group environment where we work with students and we try to get them to the final draft of their essays. Okay. So these are things that are available for our, coaching families, right? It's part of your kind of coaching package. For the general public, you can sign up for this if you're interested. You can go to www.collegeappintensive.com. Okay. The other thing I want to tell you about, because I saw a lot of juniors in here, is Financial Aid Secrets, the other kind of group that I am the kind of head of, right? We want to make sure that families save money on college. So if you're thinking that you make too much money, or that your older child didn't get anything, or that your neighbor didn't get anything, or that, oh my God, we're going to have to pay an arm and a leg for college, hope is not lost, right? So there will also be a way for you guys to kind of get more information and sign up for a consultation there as well. Okay. Now, I do want to move on to Q&A because I saw a bunch of questions. Okay. So if you are interested in talking to us, I want you to text college, right, to 949-298-6234 if you want more information about our coaching programs or about the College App Intensive, right? If you're interested in signing up for a financial aid consultation, right? And so you might be thinking, oh, I make more than $200,000. I'm not going to get anything. No, you need to text me right away. $300,000, text me. $400,000, text me. If your income's over $1 million a year, don't text me. You don't need my help, right? But if you're under $1 million, you need to talk to me. Okay. So 949-298-6234. Either text money or college, and we will get you that information. You can text money and college, and we will get you the information on everything. Okay. So let us go ahead and go into Q&A. So for those that need to go to dinner, right? I'm getting hungry too. But for those that need to go to dinner, thank you guys for spending time with us here today. Okay. But for those that want to hear the kind of answers to the questions that are in the chat and in the Q&A, you guys can stick around just a little bit. Okay. All right. Perfect. So I'm just going to stop the recording because again, I want to make the Q&A for people that showed up. Okay. So for everyone else out there, enjoy your night and we'll talk to you again soon.